Well, good morning, everyone. Honored guests, members of the media, and those connecting with us virtually. Thank you for joining us at City Hall in Camrose for some very exciting news. News that will support our quality of life and create jobs for our community. Before we get to that, I want to take the opportunity to recognize a number of dignitaries that we have here today. We're joined by my colleagues at the Legislature, the Honourable Premier Jason Kenney, Premier of Alberta and Minister of Transportation, the Honourable Rick McIver. I would also like to recognize Camrose Mayor, His Worship Norm Mayor, along with several members of the Camrose City Council, Councillor David Offram, Councillor Agnes Hovland, Councillor Max Lindstrand, and Councillor Wayne Thronsend. The global pandemic has forced changes to the way we live. Its presence has impacted nearly every economy in the world. As we continue to take steps to reduce the spread of COVID-19, Alberta's government has a bold and ambitious plan to get us back on track. A plan to create jobs, a plan to put our economy back on the path of growth. Alberta's Recovery Plan. Today's news here in Camrose is another step in that plan. My friends, it's now time to introduce Premier Jason Kenney.
All right, thank you so much, Jackie, for your introduction and for your strong representation of the people of Camrose. And thank you as well to Minister McIver for being here. He's been stalking me all around the province as we've been announcing important infrastructure investments. Last week it was Plamondon in northern Alberta. And great to see you again, Rick, as well as Mayor Norm Mayor. I appreciate it. I think probably the longest serving mayor in Alberta, if I'm not mistaken. Just pretty close, as well as members of the Camrose City Council to your beautiful new City Hall, and county leaders and staff as well. I appreciate everyone being here for this important announcement about investing in vital infrastructure and job creation as part of Alberta's Recovery Plan. I'm touring Alberta after we wrapped up the legislature a couple of weeks ago. It's always great to leave the political bubble, or as Ralph Klein used to say, to get out from under the dome and visit with folks who are working hard in the industries that drive our province. We all know this has been a super tough year for Alberta with the pandemic, the global coronavirus recession, and the largest price collapse in the history of energy. We have been hit by a triple whammy in Alberta. But as I go around the province, I see the can-do spirit of Albertans alive and well. In fact, a lot of folks are just keen to get this virus under control and get back to normal so we can get the economy moving and growing again. That's definitely the case in Camrose and the surrounding area. People here have shown great personal responsibility and regard for others in the face of the pandemic, and your efforts have paid off. Central Alberta's had the fewest confirmed cases of any zone in the province. And as of this past weekend, there was only one active case in Camrose County. And so congratulations and thank you for the great discipline and care exhibited by folks in Camrose, in the community of Camrose and the surrounding county. You've also been very proactive about providing support and deferrals to help businesses and families struggling to pay their bills. So congratulations on your care and your diligence. The battle on COVID, though, is far from over. But if we remain vigilant and disciplined, we'll be able to keep COVID under control and continue to carefully reopen more of our normal lives, including a safe reopening of schools this September. I've said from the start of this crisis that we have to be equally focused on protecting lives and livelihoods. The economic, social, and public health impact of a broad, prolonged shutdown would be devastating in so many ways. It would be incalculable damage to our society and to people. That's one of the reasons that we kept Alberta's legislature open through much of the past 5 months. We had twice as many sitting days and passed twice as many bills as the average amongst Canada's legislature. And while the federal parliament basically shut down in the summer, we worked on behalf of Albertans, passing 34 bills, the majority of which were either related to emergency measures to support public health and provide things like income, loan, and tax and utility deferrals, as well as relief for renters and small businesses, small business restart grants, and other support for those who lost their jobs and have suffered hardship through this crisis. We also had bills that put in place the short and long-term building blocks of Alberta's Recovery Plan. In the short term, we're investing in projects to get Albertans working now, building public infrastructure that will support our economy and prosperity long into the future. And that's what brings me here today for not just one, but two funding announcements. I'm very pleased to announce that Alberta taxpayers are investing a total of $11.8 million in two infrastructure projects that are key to jobs, growth, and quality of life in Camrose. The first is a $10.2 million investment to help the city upgrade its wastewater treatment plant. That money will help cover costs associated with meeting recent changes to the province's regulations dealing with effluent. The result will be a cleaner environment for everyone in Camrose, and the work starts next year. The government's investment will support 20 direct and 16 indirect jobs. And I want to thank the Camrose for being partners with us on this through their allocation, through their MSI funding. Our second contribution is $1.6 million for resurfacing the city's airport, including the entire runway and taxi and apron areas. The airport hasn't been refurbished since 1992. Now, were you mayor back in 1992? Yes, I thought so. This investment will improve safety, update infrastructure, and open new opportunities for economic development and more aviation-related enterprise. It also helps agriculture because Camrose is really the hub of crop flights that support farmers around central Alberta. This is a vitally important facility for Camrose and the entire region, so I expect there will be a lot of interest. More than 5,000 flights arrive and depart from Camrose's airport annually. It hosts volunteers and aircraft serving with the Civil Air Search and Rescue Association, so when lives are on the line and minutes count, pilots and aircrew will have the benefits of a modernized runway. And as I mentioned, crop spraying companies use this airport as a base of operations. And with this region having some of the richest and most productive farmland in the province, enabling those companies to work safely and effectively is essential for farmers and agribusiness. The Camrose Airport is also an important transportation hub for the Big Valley Jamboree, and it will be once again once the pandemic has come to an end. I attended the Jamboree last year at the invitation of Brett Kissel, and I'm looking forward to coming next year. I know how disappointed folks were that the event had to be canceled this year. But the Jamboree will come back in a big way, just like the rest of Alberta will come back. And we're laying the groundwork for the recovery now. Work on the airport will begin next spring, supporting 8 jobs. Today's investments are part of Alberta's Recovery Plan, a bold, ambitious, long-term plan to build, diversify, and create jobs in areas like agriculture, tourism, technology, financial services, petrochemicals, agri-foods, while creating tens of thousands of jobs now. Overall, the plan makes infrastructure investments totaling more than $10 billion this year, the single largest building program in Alberta's history and the largest per capita of any Canadian province. It's projected to create 50,000 jobs that are much needed this year. That's the building program alone. It includes projects like the $1.5 billion Alberta investment that got the ball rolling on construction of the Keystone XL pipeline this year. The plan also restores Alberta's place as the best place in North America in which to make new job-creating investments by speeding up our job creation tax cut and red tape reduction plans. I want to wrap up by acknowledging that everything we're doing now to get Alberta through the crisis is paid for with debt, and that today's deficits are tomorrow's taxes. But it's all designed to enable the private sector to get back to its key role as the creator of jobs, growth, and wealth, including the tax revenues that we will need to dig us out of the deep fiscal hole that Alberta is now in. But I have no doubt that we will get there. We have the people, we have the resources, we have the indomitable spirit of Alberta to get it done. As our history has shown over and over again, in the face of adversity, Albertans always rise to the challenge. We're doing that again, and that means that we will have a brighter future. So thank you to the great folks from the City and County of Camrose for your cooperation. I'm looking forward to getting both these projects done to ensure jobs and growth, to protect the environment, and to make life better for Albertans. And with that, I believe we'll hear from Minister McIver.
Okay. Thank you, Premier. It's certainly my pleasure to be here this morning, to be part of this event, and it's great to be here with our MLA Lovely, Mayor, councillors, and Albertans. As the Premier stated, it's tough. It's been a tough year. The collapse in energy prices, the global pandemic, have challenged us like no other time in Alberta's history. We're down, but Albertans, as you know, are never out. Albertans are resilient. They're responding by flattening the curve and keeping the vulnerable safe. And Alberta's government is focused on our province's economic recovery. In June, we announced Alberta's Economic Recovery Plan, a plan to create tens of thousands of good-paying jobs for Albertans. A plan that, by building schools, roads, and other core infrastructure, will benefit Albertans and their communities. These investments are critical to getting people back to work and helping our communities build a strong economic base to weather these turbulent times. Efficient and safe local bridges, resource roads, community airports, water and modern wastewater infrastructure are indispensable in Alberta's rural communities. We're joined by municipal leaders today from Camrose. Alberta's government is thankful to have a strong relationship with our municipalities. Local, on-the-ground leaders tell us what infrastructure they need to upgrade and to build. Sometimes they tell us very loudly, but we're listening. And I have to tell you, their voice is strengthened by MLA Lovely in this area, who never misses an opportunity to remind me and other ministers just how important the interests of Camrose and area are as in their part of Alberta. And that means each investment that we make has to be strategic. We know the investments delivered by our Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, or STIP as we usually call it, and water infrastructure grant programs are sound because municipalities have told us that they're sound. They've told us what bridge, road, local airport, water treatment projects are most critical to their individual communities. So it's great to be here in Camrose to talk about our investment in two infrastructure projects that are fundamental to jobs, growth, and the quality of life in Camrose. As Premier mentioned, $10.2 million towards the upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant will help ensure new safety and environmental standards can be met and make sure that as Camrose grows, that the water will be there for the new residents and the new businesses that come to Camrose. The $1.6 million grant will go towards resurfacing the city's airport. Again, bolstering economic development and making Camrose more accessible for those people that want to travel here, do business here, and create jobs right here. So together, these projects will support over 40 direct and indirect jobs, encouraging other economic development in Camrose after the fact. And as I stated earlier, COVID-19 and an unprecedented collapse in energy prices have hit Alberta hard, but now we are busy looking forward to start the process of rebuilding Alberta's economy and getting people back to work. This is the largest infrastructure program in Alberta's history, designed to build and diversify and create jobs. And in fact, about 50,000 jobs will be created through our Economic Recovery Plan. These projects lay the foundation for the private sector to create thousands of well-paying jobs for workers while creating many spin-off benefits for Alberta. The Premier is correct when he talks about the resilience of Albertans. We're a tough bunch in here in Alberta, and we'll get through this together. Now it's my privilege to invite His Worship.
Good morning, and thank you, Premier Kenney, Minister of Transportation, and our MLA, Jackie Lovely, and honored guests. It's certainly our privilege to be part of this announcement today and to appreciate the investment that is being made in the infrastructure for the City of Camrose as well as our surrounding communities. The wastewater treatment plant is something that has been on the burner for some time, but because of changing technologies and requirements, it's something we have to move forward with, and we're in the process of putting that together. The infrastructure involvement in the airport and resurfacing is a benefit to all, not only commercially, but from our farmers' point of view, as well as anyone else wishing to make and take advantage of the facility that we have to offer. We're very pleased to work with the provincial government, and we thank you very much for your assistance on these various programs to make this come to be a reality. We look forward to continued support and also continued working with you in a very positive manner for the benefit of our citizens as well as the other folks in the province of Alberta who from time to time take advantage of what we have to offer in the beautiful city of Camrose. So thank you again. Pleased to have you here today and pleased to hear the comments on the announcements, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're all trading spots here.
Okay, so for our friends in the media, there's a mic to your left. I'd invite you to step up and, hi, Tom.
Maybe just before the first question, could I grab that? Thanks. I just wanted to point out as well, I'll be visiting with Minister Panda later on today to highlight the investment that Alberta is making in building the new school here as well, and looking forward to getting out there with Minister Prasad Panda. And all of this is in addition to the $500 million of additional support, Your Worship and councillors, that the Government of Alberta has announced for municipal infrastructure as part of our COVID response. That's in addition to the $1 billion already in this year's budget for the municipal MSI. So that's a 50% increase effectively. And we are just asking that you spend that on shovel-ready projects that create jobs now and also help to improve our long-term productivity as an economy. And that's also in addition to the $600 million in support that was announced recently for operations for municipalities to help you cope with the COVID crisis, because we know your revenues have declined, your expenditures have gone up, much like other governments, and so we are happy to be partners with you on all of that. And I'm happy to, Tom, you got your first question?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, a couple different topics. The first on, kids are going back to school in 2.5, 3 weeks, and there's the mask procurement program. We've heard from a couple of companies that started producing masks through the Bits and Pieces program. They're curious why a large portion of the masks will be coming from Old Navy as opposed to Alberta suppliers for students here in Alberta.
Tom, I was not involved in the procurement process. I don't know the answer to that question. I encourage you to contact the relevant officials. My understanding is that there was a very super rush on this because of the recommendation that we received from the Chief Medical Officer of Health 8 days ago to require masks for children over grade 4 in common areas of the schools. And we decided as a government to step up and provide 2 reusable masks to every student as well as teachers and staff. We think that in most cases parents will be providing masks, and hopefully that they'll do so, but we're concerned that in some cases the kids may forget the mask, they might lose them. We don't want them being turned away at the school doors because they're unprepared in terms of masking. So that's why we decided to step up just last week with hundreds of thousands of masks, millions of masks for Alberta students and school staff, and had to do a very quick procurement process to get those in place over the next 3 weeks. So I believe that the relevant ministry did a super fast procurement process and went to suppliers who could supply that much that quickly at a reasonable price. And so I'd be happy to look into the details and get back to you on that, on exactly how that worked.
My second question is on rural assessments. There's a review going on right now. Rural municipalities are raising a lot of concerns, including out here in Camrose County, about what reduced assessments on oil and gas facilities would mean for their bottom line. There's some questioning they'd even be viable anymore as communities. Has the government taken into consideration the financial legitimacy, the financial backing of municipalities in this review?
We certainly will take that into consideration. No decision has been made. The law requires us to do a periodic review of the assessment rules, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are seeking input from municipalities, from job creators and others on this issue. It all began because a year ago we saw a number of Alberta gas companies going bankrupt and shutting down their operations, laying off employees, and unable to pay property taxes at all. We also saw those environmental liabilities often going back to the taxpayer with insolvent companies. And particularly for the dry, shallow gas producers in Alberta, who tend to be more in the south and the east of the province, what we have seen is that linear property taxes are by far their number one expenditure, more than labor or equipment or anything else. And in some cases, we have gas producers for whom property tax represents 80% of their total annual expenditures. And many of those companies have been teetering on insolvency, on bankruptcy. And if they go broke, then they go to zero taxes for those municipalities, workers get laid off, and the environmental liabilities often end up going back to the taxpayer. So that's why we asked Municipal Affairs to start a review. And we have found some disturbing things. We have found that we have gas producers in the Peace Country who in some cases are paying as much as 15 times more linear property tax to Alberta municipalities on the Alberta side of the border than they are on the BC side of the border. So, and we have a similar discrepancy with Saskatchewan. So our linear property tax assessment rules are completely out of whack compared to our neighboring provinces. And at least for some, particularly dry gas producers, it has been driving some of them close to bankruptcy. And there appears in many cases to be no relationship between the actual value of the assets and the assessed value for tax purposes. So that is why we did this review. We've put out a bunch of different scenarios. No decisions have been made. We will certainly listen to municipalities. It's not our intention to see a huge revenue hit on those municipalities. At the same time, if dozens of companies go bankrupt, then the goose that laid the golden egg is dead at the end of the day, and there's no property tax revenue. So we've all got to figure this out in a common sense way. That balances the needs of municipalities for revenue with the need for an accurate assessment model, with the need for survival for some of these companies. You know, yesterday, one of these companies went down, Painted Pony. Their share price 5 years ago was $14. Yesterday, their shares were bought by CNRL at, I think, 32 cents. So that just gives you a sense of how desperate the situation is for many of those companies.
Anybody else?
Hi, Premier CTV. First of all, any thoughts to share on the murder of a Red Deer doctor yesterday in his clinic?
It just terrible news, and everybody's, I know, hearts and minds go out to the family and the loved ones and the coworkers of that physician. I want to commend the police for having responded quickly and alertly to that attack and preventing any other violence, any other victims of that person. By all accounts, the person appears to have been deranged. We'll obviously wait for further reports from the police in the region, but it is a tragic expression of a violent crime. And as I say, our thoughts and prayers go out to the colleagues, family, and loved ones and friends of the physician who was attacked yesterday.
How do you feel about the optics regarding the selection of IFR as one of the school mass suppliers, considering it's a Minister Lagrange constituency and whose CEO donated to her campaign?
Yeah, my understanding is that the procurement process was handled by an independent third party. Minister was not involved whatsoever. And this is a major central Alberta manufacturing company that produces equipment like this. In fact, they retooled, as I understand, to exactly to produce masks here in Alberta on a large scale. And so my understanding is that when a third party on behalf of a government department put out requests for proposals, they submitted a bid and they won a portion of the work in a transparent arm's length process, which is exactly how the system should work.
Last question. There's a demonstration in Calgary today about the lack of help from the province has provided victims from June's $1.2 billion hailstorm. What do you say to those people, and can they expect any provincial help as they feel insurance companies are not stepping up?
Well, the province has provided help. We did declare that to be a disaster after a scientific review, which means that the city will submit to us relevant costs, which the province will pay under the Disaster Recovery Plan. That includes, for example, support for homeowners for uninsurable damage, such as surface flooding. And obviously, the province does not reimburse people for loss associated with insurable property damage. That would include, you know, typical housing insurance or car insurance. The province has never done that, and the province cannot become everybody's insurance company. That would be an incentive for, first of all, that would let the insurance companies off the hook in terms of making good on their policies, and secondly, it would put all of the cost of insuring everything on taxpayers, which is not responsible. So we're taking exactly the same approach that is in the law, that every Alberta government has always followed, which is to support people generously for damage done to uninsurable property. As I say, we believe several hundred homes incurred surface flooding, and they will receive support through the Disaster Recovery Program. But I also understand from the Insurance Bureau of Canada that they are something like 70,000 homes have qualified for insurance payments, for insurance payouts, totaling well over $1 billion. And so insurance has to do its, and we will be there to ensure, to speak up for people if they have any evidence that insurance companies are not honoring their obligation to policyholders. We will read the riot act to those insurance companies. They have a legal responsibility to pay out those policies. And just as the province is there to help with respect to uninsurable property. We're also working with the city on other related expenses, and that's an ongoing process. We have not yet received a formal funding request from the City of Calgary or the City of Airdrie under the Disaster Recovery Program.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Oh, okay, that was short.